Hey, it's Travis. Too many camp directors run just on gut feel. Our free Resilient Camp Blueprint Diagnostic is your dashboard for resilience. Take it today at camp.mba/Travis. Again, that's camp.mba/Travis.
This is CampHacker. Come find our show notes and our blog for summer camp leaders at camphacker.org.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Camp Hacker podcast. My name is Travis Allison. I run a blog about running a great summer camp at camphacker.tv, and I'm also one of the founding members of gocamp.pro. Hey, Mike.
Hey, Travis. How are you doing today? I'm Mike Sladden, the owner-director of Camp Pathfinder. We're up in Algonquin Park, Ontario.
Hi, Travis. I'm Woody, and I co-direct Camp Wanapate, which is up in Temagami, and it's a co-ed wilderness canoe tripping camp.
Good morning, Travis. This is Fred Sprout with YMCA Camp Manojin. We're located on the edge of the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness for canoeing, backpacking, and rock climbing trips for teens.
Good morning. My name's Ruth, and I'm the summer camp director with YMCA Camp Pinecrest. We're run by the Y of GTA, and we're located in Muskoka.
Right on. Well, thank you all for being here. I'm glad you're here to be part of this panel. It's a topic, as I've said to you, and I'm now saying to the people listening and watching, it's a topic that I feel I'm really connected to. I really love the idea of our topic today. Before we dive into that, though, I want to spend just a second and let the people who are listening and watching this on YouTube just get to know you folks just a little bit. So, Ruth, tell us a bit about Pinecrest and the range of what you folks offer.
Yeah, Pinecrest, I guess we'll start that we do have a traditional summer camp model where we offer programs for 5 to 14-year-olds ranging from 3 days to 2 weeks. And then as campers age through those programs, their trip experience lengthens. And so everyone does a trip. It's part of, it's an inherent tool, a tool that we commit to at Pinecrest to use. And then as campers grow, we have our traditional program, but then we also have 2 leadership streams that we focus on. So one of those is what we call our traditional leadership. And those programs, you spend a good mix of time at camp and on trip, again, using trip as a major tool for us. And then finally, our adventure leadership stream. So adventure leadership programs start at 13 and go to 16. And those are trips from 2 weeks to 7 weeks in length. Again, as you age, we focus on age and that development stream. And then our trips are located all throughout Canada, mostly Northern Ontario, Manitoba, and Quebec. And in the Northwest Territories and Nunavut, depending on the year.
Right on. Mm-hmm. Thanks, Ruth. So, Fred, for Manojin, how would you describe the program, just quickly?
Yeah, so we were founded in 1922. We're strictly a wilderness tripping camp. There's not really any sort of residential camp component. So campers come in and they prepare for their trip. Those can be as short as a 5-day session, 3 days on trail, and as long as 40 to 45 days on trail. They go everywhere from our backyard Boundary Waters up to the Canadian Rockies, up to the Brooks Range in Alaska, up to Nunavut, Northwest Territories, kind of anywhere and everywhere. And offer a progression of trips so that kids can grow their skills, as they get older. And then during the winter months, offer a full winter camp opportunity to go Nordic skiing, snowshoeing, and dog sledding up there.
Yeah, right on.
Adventures for everybody.
That's cool.
Yeah. Thanks, Fred. Fred, where do you draw most of your campers from?
Primarily from the Twin Cities, so Minneapolis and St. Paul. We do get a few kids from the East and West Coast and a couple international, but primarily it's Minnesota based.
Yeah, great. And Woody, what about Wanapate?
Well, Wanapate is it's I think a bit unique in the sense that it's co-ed, and it's a co-ed wilderness tripping camp right from age 7 right on through to 18 when the kids those of you that the camp it's just it's a neat opportunity having the genders work so closely together, canoe trip together and share those experiences. So kids, if you're 7, 8, or 9, you come for 1 or 2 weeks. You'll do a 3-day canoe trip or 6 days if you're there for 2 weeks. And then when you get to that 10, 11 age bracket, you're coming for 2 weeks, 12, 13, 14, 15, 2 weeks or a month. We start whitewater teaching at the age 14 level. And then we go on from there. Canoe trips up you're 5 days in length, and then other trips into, say, northern Quebec and other areas that folks have mentioned, like Nunavut in the Northwest Territories, and trips ranging from 2 days in length, and all done on a co-ed basis.
Right on. Thanks, Woody. And Mike, tell us about Pathfinder.
Okay, yeah. So Pathfinder is a boys' wilderness tripping camp that was founded in 1914 up in Algonquin Park, Ontario. We're wilderness trips and a full in-camp program on a base camp island in the interior of Algonquin Park. The camp receives boys from 7 to 16 years old from all over North America and from Central and South America, Europe, and Asia. So kids are coming from all over the place to go to Pathfinder. It's very small, 110 boys in a session, and we run about 85 canoe trips a year. When you're a young kid at Pathfinder, you're taking 3-4 day trips. By the time you're 10, you're taking a week-long canoe trip at a time, and it runs all the way up to the 15-year-olds who are doing anywhere from 18 to 38-day trips in northern Quebec and Ontario. There's a leadership program that starts at 16 and runs through 19. That's a 3-year apprenticeship that's focused on wilderness canoe leadership. And we're having a great time, and also doing a ton of, educational programming in the spring and fall.
Madam. Great. Well, I am, as I said before, I'm super grateful that you are all here. And it's nice for you to commit the time to this audience and talk about what we're going to talk about today. So I'm gonna put an edit point in there. I'm going to stop recording. Can you guys just check? What are yours in particular? We were breaking up when you were talking. I don't know if it is if other stuff running, and even my video dropped. But the nice thing is we can always edit these. So just double check and see if there's anything else that would be.
I've been. You guys have been breaking up, and I've been trying to figure out what else might be running, and it's not like I don't have Dropbox or anything on right now.
Okay.
I guess, if I'm off a video, I'm sure it's probably going to be a bit better.
Right.
What's your thought?
Well, you're probably right. But right now you're fine. So if you notice I start to break up, maybe you just drop the video out on your own, and I'll remember to keep coming back to you. I'll call it to you when it's your turn.
All right.
All
Maybe
right.
give Woody a chance to redo.
What? Yeah, his intro. Yeah.
For me, at least, it was choppy, and I think he's got a great setup for Wanapitei.
Yeah, right on. Cool. Yeah, since you're working now, we'll do it again. Just Woody's. And Woody, how about Wanapitei?
Well, Camp Wanapitei, I think it's there is an element of uniqueness to it in the sense that we do everything on a co-ed basis. So all canoe trips are co-ed, so whether you're 7 or right up to age 18 and in between. So it's a really empowering place that way, with the genders working together. And it's been like that since the beginning. The camp's been around since 1931, and that's the philosophy that started and we've happily continued on with. And our kids will do canoe trips. If you're 7, 8, or 9 years of age, you might come to camp for a 1 or 2 week session, and you'll do a 3 or 6 day experience, wilderness canoe trip in that time. And then, 10 through to say 14, 15, you're there for 2 weeks or a month. 14, you're starting to learn how to paddle in whitewater, so moving water on rivers. And we have at 16, 17, we have trips up to the James Bay area, a wilderness leadership and training program, trips into northern Quebec. And then when you get right on up to 18 for us, it's the Northwest Territories, Nunavut, Labrador, although it's been some time since we've been to Labrador. And those trips are 52 days in length.
Yeah, right on. So today, what I wanted to talk with these folks about is the power of the big trip. And I know lots of camps that offer overnights or 3 to 4 day trips, even week long. But I think that there's something different about a trip that is 14 days, 21 days. I've heard people talk about over 50-day trips in a summer, and having had many friends who've been on those trips, have seen great films from those trips, and just so many great things that have come out of it. I really wanted to bring people in to talk about it today. So I'm grateful that the four of you are here. I had said we were going to not dwell too much on logistics, but in the end, I think I'm going to start with that because I think I have a pretty clear idea of what a big trip means, but there is some huge stuff involved in that. And I'm not talking about how to pack. I don't want to talk about how to pack, but I want to think about how you define a big trip and how you look after things like food, water, all of those things along the way, and how you get all that organized in the beginning. So, Ruth, I'm going to start with you at Pinecrest. How do you look after the logistics of pulling together some of these big trips?
I think something that really helps us is the infrastructure that we have in place to support that. And so one is that we hire someone seasonally as our out tripping director, but that position is a 4 to 6 month contract, depending on their availability. And then they also have an assistant director and staff. And so just in terms of those human resources of people who know our roots, who know the language, and who know the space that we have where we do all of the packing and planning out of. So that's part of it. Another one is over the years getting to know roots better, and so that we have relationships with local folks in those areas in terms of knowing evacuation points and knowing ways to support them. And then spending a lot of time in venues like this, connecting with others so that we know best practices. We know the best way to communicate. We know the best way to pack, the best resources for dehydrated food, for example. Those kinds of things we're always learning and looking for more information on.
Yeah. Right
start. It's a huge question.
Yeah. Fred, for you folks, what's the philosophy of pulling together a big trip?
Yeah, I think I'd piggyback on Ruth. It's really important to have staff that are committed and devoted to making those trips happen logistically. So having a person whose full job is packing out food and ordering those quantities of food, having a full-time canoe master, a full-time equipment room manager during those summer months. But I think, perhaps more importantly is having just sort of our wealth from the community. So, having established routes and having, every guide keep a journal, keep a diary of their trip, having those trip records, and people who have guided those trips in the past are such a wealth of knowledge, and having them available to talk about, what route was appropriate for their trip and why they chose that river, or why they chose to go to the Brooks Range versus any other area, and having just kind of those experiences from past groups to pull upon, I think is an amazing resource that we're really lucky to have.
Yeah, right on. Mike, for you folks, what sort of budget's not even the right word. Like, what sort of gear do you folks focus on to go on these big trips?
Well, for gear, we've come up with kind of a plan over the years. In the most practical sense, we're using a combination of either Royal X type expedition trip canoes on big northern rivers, or we're using wood canvas canoes because part of our prime directive is traditional travel, and wood canvas is 99% of our fleet. We're using 4 guides on a trip with 8 boys, so a 12-man trip. We're doing food drops. We're doing air service, train travel, remote trucking, all the trains, planes, and automobiles to make all that work. We're giving them the best possible food, communication gear. So budget-wise, it's the most expensive part of what Pathfinder does, and it is kind of a loss leader. Yeah. As you can imagine, and maybe the other colleagues will say the same thing. It's not so much that the camp profits from the long tripping program so much as the staff development is there for future guides. The transformative life experience piece of it is there. And the pride of camp culture and ethos is there with the long tripping.
Right.
So we spend a ton of money on it to make sure it's done exactly right. We think we're, kind of a blue ribbon operation for those long trips, and it pays us big dividends in the culture and staff leadership of the camp.
Right. All right. So that actually takes us in a great direction, and maybe Woody, you could lead us off with this. What do you see are the benefits to your camp for investing the human resources, the time, and the money in a program like this?
Well, I think for me, on a personal level, I mean, clearly, I don't think any of us are in this to become rich and make a lot of money. I mean, for us, it's about, producing folks that are, that go on to contribute to society in, I think, really great ways, making really strong people. So for us, I may be a little bit off a topic here, but I think the investment for us is about the resilience that we create in the kids that come through the programs, that go on to become staff members, that are still transforming every time they return from a canoe trip, whether you're a kid or a staff member. And I think, the investment really comes down to that. I mean, we go with best practices and making sure that we've got all the best technology and gear that we can have and what's available. But it comes really down to making resilient people that can go on and be just great contributors to the world that we live in. And it sounds a bit cheesy, but gosh, when you peel it all back, that's what keeps me going for sure.
Yeah. Fred, how about you? I was thinking, what sort of changes do you see in staff? Not somebody about campers, but in staff, what sort of changes do you see, Fred, when they go on big trips?
Yeah, I think for a lot of our staff, Minogen is a great starting point for a career in the outdoor industry. So for a lot of them, this is their kind of launching point to work for Outward Bound, to work for Knowles, to work for a number of wilderness therapy programs. And man, it's like you start putting down your trip resume and people ask, so you guided a 40-day canoe trip in the Arctic. Tell us about that, So just from that professional standpoint, it's a huge advantage. It's a huge opportunity for them. But I think what's really neat is they, develop such a strong relationship with those campers, and they're able to share so much responsibility, really involve them into the decision-making process on a day-to-day basis, much more so than you can do on, say, a 5-day trip, where by the time the trip's over, you've just gotten to know and trust those younger campers. Yeah. So it's an amazing opportunity to have a very different style of leadership. And I think that's just a great kind of professional development piece for them, and a pretty neat way to get to make some strong relationships.
Yep. And Ruth, for you folks, other than the skills training, what sort of training do you give them to deal with? I can picture lots of issues, putting aside first aid and map reading and rescue skills. What sort of training do you give them to deal with the issues that come up on this longer term, close knit, physically close teamwork trip?
It's a great question. I mentioned it before. The language we use is that we call this our leadership, a stream of our leadership program. And so we spend a lot of time talking about developmental stages. So knowing the difference between how a 13-year-old interacts with others and how a 16-year-old interacts with others. We talk a lot about leadership development and different leadership styles. And so that our trainers are in a position where they're able to facilitate that kind of learning and those kinds of conversations with our young people. That being said, we've also been putting a lot of emphasis into training on mental health over the past few years. And so we equip our staff with mindfulness tools and techniques, understanding different levels of mental health and where they need more support for us. And then a big part of that as well is our out tripping director, who's on what we call the bat phone, so the call-in phone all the time. They have an even additional level of training so that if they get a call, they know how to ask the right questions and to further support that team building. So there are a lot of the kind of foundational stuff about how to build a team and how to build individual leaders, identifying those strengths. But then we, of course, also have to equip them for the challenges. And we don't know how each young person is going to respond to the challenges that we can't even predict that they might encounter on those trips. So, yeah.
Great. Mike, what sort of training do your folks go through when they are mean, they've obviously grown up in the system, but what sort of stuff do you do to get them ready for changing roles and becoming a leader?
Yeah, well, I guess on the superficial level, you've got certification and formal training, and we do outsource that, but simultaneously run it in-house. So for Pathfinder, for example, Orca moving water levels 1 and 2 training are a required part of the progression as a leader, and those are run by Pathfinder staff with professional paddling instructors. But we do it together as a team. It's sort of home court advantage, on the Madawaska and Gull Rivers. And then you've got wilderness medical and emergency training. And of course, we think WMA is top notch, and we've got every single person in leadership at the camp is first responder or EMT. And we do that all in-house right at our base camp every single year. And the camp pays for it 100% to advance the staff's qualification. Same thing with life-saving, wilderness water safety, NLS, all those good things, and then swiftwater rescue certs for long trip leaders. So I would say that's the superficial stuff, though, Travis, right?
Yeah,
and then the substrata is years of progression of responsibility and duties as a second guide on a trip that may be 8 or 9 days in the park, and then you're moving up to guiding on a James or Hudson Bay trip as a second or third guide and a party of 4, and gradually working your way up in age experience, so that when it comes time for you to lead that 38-day trip on the Severn River, you're totally ready for it, and both your decision-making and your confidence in your fellows and your base camp, all of that is predictable and repeatable, and that's just our culture. It's just to gradually work everybody. I guess that's one important thing for us to mention, too, is that we think that everybody who's on the staff has an equal shot at leading these trips, and we don't want to end up with 2 or 3 people that are constantly doing the Hurricane or the Winnisk River. We want everyone to rotate through these roles, and then they pay it forward, incredibly pay it forward at camp and in their own families and community.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So do you build that into your culture, the leadership culture, the passing things on? And Fred was talking about journaling and things, is something I never even thought of. But of course, it makes so much sense. It's such a great way to make sure that carries on. Is that something like what you guys do?
Well, I think a lot of it is there's a purpose behind it, and a lot of it is quite organic in a sense. So you have staff that have been on staff for 10 years, and you have folks that are just coming on for their first year to learn from others. And as like others have said, and Slads was just saying, there's a lot of third-party stuff that happens. So, dealing with the certifications and bringing people in to do that. But I think a lot of the stuff, we give it direction for sure, and a lot of it is just that the sharing. So when you have a younger staff leading with a staff member that's been around before, there's a lot of collective knowledge that gets passed on. And I think that's the beauty of our camps, is that we really do have a solid foundation of that collective knowledge. And our job as directors, and like Ruth, you were talking about mental illness, that's 10 years ago, that was not the topic that it is right now. So you interject that in, and we address that and work that. And then now that information is starting to get into the system and how we deal with that. So it's the staff. We have staff that, like I said, have been here for 10 years. And every single trip that they come home from, and I see them paddle under our bridge, there is something there. They look different. It's something physically. It's whatever they've got. It's just different. They've learned as well as the kids, and it's really cool to see that happen.
Right.
Travis, if I could jump in, I know, what Fred, Ruth, and Woody are saying really resonates with me, and I bet they would all agree that what hangs off of this sort of tripping tradition structure is the idea that the senior guides and the younger guides with them on these long trips have this beautiful interaction, both in the preseason and the preparation, in conducting the trip, and in the relationships that they form and have with each other, sometimes for years after that. And that really trickles down in a beautiful way to the kids, the participants of the trip. So I really, as I said before, I really think that the certifications and the stuff you can have a card in your wallet about is one piece of the puzzle. It's important, but it can't hold a candle to the richness and the substance of these relationships. And like what he said, when the guys come home from these trips, they're transformed, and you can see it. It's so obvious, and a lot of that comes from how well they've blended together emotionally, and with the kids. It is the training.
Yeah. So that's a great piece about staff, and all incredibly important. And I'm so glad you said that about relationships, Mike, because it's certainly the thing that I have seen from friends who've been on these trips and the people they share this responsibility with. And I always say, for even sort of more traditional day camp and residential camp, that this will be the job in which you have the most responsibility in your entire life. But then you take that and multiply it by 10 or 100, because you're throwing them completely isolated out into extremes of weather, location, behaviors, all of those things. And the changes that must be just remarkable that happen because of that. So let's move this a bit then and speak about kids. What do kids get out of this experience, to your mind? I'll let you start again, Mike. What sort of thing do you see from your boys when they get out of it, when they come back?
Well, for a lot of our guys, it's the culmination of a childhood career in tripping. A lot of these guys started with overnights on our home lake, and the next thing you know, they're out for 5 days, then it's 10 days. They've collected a resume of every lake and river in Algonquin Park. They're excited about their first Temagami adventure that might be 14 or 16 days cruising around in Temagami. They're ecstatic about the prospect of their first, Des Moines River descent in Quebec, or their first James Bay trip. And then they're kind of beside themselves when they get told, and our tradition is you find out 2 days before departure if you're headed on a particular Hudson Bay river. So there's that excitement factor and the feeling that they're building up over their years and careers. Even bigger than that is the promise of reuniting with your friends who could be from far away from your winter life every summer, and reconnecting as a trip crew. And while we do mix things around a bit as when kids are younger, by the time they're 14, 15, many of our guys really have a tight crew of 6 or 8 guys that they really want to travel with. And they just relish those friendships and that team ability to really move and to really live nicely on the land and really enjoy each other's company. So that's the camper piece of it. And of course, we're always looking for that next trip staff guide from the camper ranks. And the guys know that too. And if it figures in their plans or their family's plans for the future, they're giving us signals that they want to be part of that experience. And we're gratefully receiving those signals and looking in our own way for them and their potential.
Yeah. Fred, when you, and I don't know if this is part of your job specifically, but as a camp, when you folks talk to parents about sending their kids on big trips, what sort of things do you talk to them about?
Yeah, so we have a fairly established, progression of trips, and no just kid can just sign up for one of these long trips on their first summer. So they've been on several trips. They've been getting evaluations from previous guides. So they're technically invited. It's an invite-only experience. So that initial letter out to parents is explaining to parents where the trip is going, why their child is being invited on this trip, what they can expect to experience while they're out there. And then we have very formal kind of informational evening where we go over a slideshow, kind of showcasing the places we go on a map, what they can experience. And our executive director, he uses the line that he's met plenty of people who have declined the invitation to go on this trip, and they've always regretted it. He's never met someone who's accepted the invitation and regretted it. And I think, it's that piece that parents are making a pretty big financial commitment. Their kids are making a pretty big time commitment. But at the end of the session, at the end of the summer, you look back and it's an experience that, no kid is going to regret. It's not the kind of experience you can easily replicate down the road. Similarly to what Mike was saying, a lot of these campers have been on several trips together in the past, and it's this real unique bond where, you go 9 months without seeing your friend, you see him again in June, and you pick right up where you left off, and now you get to go on this wild adventure together. Yep. And it's hard. It's a hard thing to to make happen later on in life once colleges and jobs come along, and just I think really stressing that these campers have already developed an appreciation for wild places. They have an appreciation for getting outside of the modern world. But man, it's just solidifying those friendships that is so huge on these trips, and really allowing them to see a place that not many people get to go. So
right,
that's a whole new level of experiences. That's just awesome.
Yeah. Woody, do you folks facilitate the conversation between parents and kids in any way? Give one a tool to talk to the other about, the experience or the time away?
That's a good question. We have certainly offered to parents, here are some ways, maybe some questions that you want to ask your kids. I mean, in particular, I'm thinking about the biggest trip that we do, because it really comes in sort of the second last day of the summer. They've flown back from, Inuvik, and they've been flying all night, and they slide into camp. They paddle under the bridge. There's 350 people going crazy. There's a big celebration welcoming them back, and the next day they're done and off to Frosh Week. Right. And there's just this you can just see it on their faces. This it's over. And so I think for some degree, we talk to some parents to say, maybe here are some questions that you might want to ask, but also be prepared for a quiet ride home. And this may be a conversation that happens at Thanksgiving once there's been some time to process what's just happened, because they're just in that transition, of going back to their real lives. And I always sort of, the kids always, when they come on to first year staff, we talk about what was really difficult, transitioning back. And it's always, when kids meet each other at Frosh Week, hey, what did you do for the summer? Oh, well, I was on a 52-day canoe trip. And how do you sum that up? Right, right. It's like you just can't really do that. So there's that, that person can't. There's no way they can relate to what I just went through, So anyways, but there's a transition that happens for sure. Yeah, definitely.
I certainly can picture the 17 or 18-year-old camper going back to school and just saying, you worked at McDonald's and partied with your friends, and I was on a 50-day canoe trip. It's just so far apart.
Yeah. It's interesting what you said, Fred, about the regret and not having regret by going on the trip. And I saw that firsthand last year, where we had a camper decide a couple of months beforehand to not go. That camper did come back up to camp to welcome the big trip back, because they decided to do another program, and it was emotionally overwhelming for them because they didn't go.
Right.
And, really transformative experiences for sure.
Yeah, we had speaking of, when you mentioned Frosh Week there and kids going off to school, we had a trip on the Coppermine River a couple years ago that lost one of its packs into an eddy, and they went on in that fall at school. He met this girl, went to a wilderness camp up in Ontario. They started talking about rivers. He says, we were on the Coppermine. We lost one of our packs. Never saw it again. And she asked him, she said, was it a tan pack with the blue barrel? And he goes, it was. And lo and behold, their group had lost a canoe, went into the same eddy, and he was able to get all of his stuff back. So
that's awesome.
One of those small world moments where not many people go to these places. People who do, you gotta run into them. And
totally.
Yeah. So I don't know if that was one of your respective camps, but
awesome.
I'm wondering. I was on the Coppermine 2 summers ago.
So were we, actually. Yeah.
Oh, hilarious.
That's awesome. We just had a French guy who was soloing on the Mistassabee River, found one of our small day packs from a yard sale wipeout our guys had, and it was like 2 months later, and he shipped it back with good wishes. And that guy got all kinds of hoodies and hats from Pathfinder. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
One thing I have to say is, you mentioned Frost Week. In the States, I don't know about in Canada so much. We find that a lot of our guys who have been leading longer trips end up leading freshman orientation,
Right.
wilderness experiences, and they get to thread together really rich and nice fabrics of relationship at their university, in part because of their wilderness travel background, and they get a leg up on career starts. And we had tons of guys who are lawyers and stockbrokers and doctors and whatnot, but a big cadre of our guys end up in professions that are related to field work or the outdoor industry, and sometimes that jump starts as you make the transition from long trip leader into university leader. Yeah.
What's neat, Travis, if I can say that, I was mentioning resilience with the kids, which then, they go on to be staff members, and that resilience continues. And there's nothing like writing a reference letter for somebody when you're referencing these experiences. They're applying to med school, whatever they're getting into. These are real life experiences. It's what a community is like, in the real world. It's a microcosm of that. And these folks, they really go off to do some pretty neat things.
Yeah. Well, this would be an open question for any of you. How do you teach your staff, and even the campers who've been on these kind of trips, how do you teach them to talk about this how to relate this to people who have no concept in resumes or anything like that?
It's interesting that you ask how we teach them, because I would say that my trainers who have taught me how to do that,
right.
Like what everyone's saying, our trainers, not all of them come from Pinecrest, but they all come from experiences of being on trips and making those transitions. And I've seen our trainers really step into that responsibility of coming alongside their participants after the programs have finished, through social media, or I doubt anyone uses snail mail anymore, but keeping connected with them and helping them, guiding them through those progressions. And I think that for me, it's been a long time since I've led a trip of that length, and being able to pass that responsibility on to folks who know it so much better, and who, even if they're leading a trip, they're still doing that same transition when they come back.
Yeah.
So, giving it to them.
Right.
Yeah, I think a lot of them, because we're empowering them to do a longer canoe trip. So therefore, the support structure back at camp of a section head or a head counselor and all of the support, it's very different on an extended canoe trip, because you have to really, really think for yourself. Not that the counselors don't think for themselves in the other environment, because they do, but it's different. So they're living what it's like to make those difficult decisions and how to guide their group. So I think they see very readily how those skills transfer to life, how they're transferable. Yeah. And I think for a lot of them, it's actually quite easy to talk about. Mm-hmm. I met a guy not that long ago, an executive with Walmart. I bumped into him and talked, what do you do? This is what I do for Walmart. My wife and I, we run a children's summer camp. And he went on to tell me about his beloved summer camp, but how he still uses stuff that he learned in his executive role. He was going off to Harvard to do a business course. And he's living in a different world than I am. Yeah. But the skills that our camps have provided, he's bringing that forward. I thought that's pretty cool.
Yeah, for sure.
One of the biggest skill sets in that regard that we've seen is the sort of addictive satisfaction that groups of trippers get out of accomplishing together what would be impossible on your own. That's a habit forming feeling of success, empowerment, satisfaction, pleasure, and it transfers, right? It transfers into every aspect of life. And when you get that feeling and want it again, then all of a sudden you're leading and joining teams of people that are doing very positive things. Could be for salary and a living, or it could be making the community or the family, even better. And so while that's hard for them to talk about in the days and weeks after a trip, I think it finally comes to the surface in their consciousness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I love too, Travis, about a long canoe trip? You're just that much longer removed from electronics. You're unplugged.
Yeah.
And that parents are seeing a lot of value in that. And I'm a parent of young children, and my 11-year-old spends more time with electronics than I'm, always happy about. So it's great to see them get unplugged for long periods of time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And kind of jumping on what Slads was saying about addictive things, like that's a whole other element where they're taken away from it and they come back from trip and realize I don't need that, or I don't want it like I used to before. Yeah, we see that a lot.
Yeah, I can have a conversation with somebody in front of me. I can actually talk to that person. It's okay.
You don't have to do it through a screen.
All right. Fred, what do you guys do in terms of reintegration? So not necessarily integration back into the camp facility, but reintegration back into the rest of life, the mundane life, as my co-director always called it.
Right. Yeah, I'm always hestant to say like the real world, because it's
never.
Hold on a sec. I think you just were in the real world.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I'm guessing all of our camps are pretty great in this way, in that we're isolated, and it's kind of that slow reintegration where you come back to camp and you see your friends and family, and you have kind of that first opportunity to talk about it a little bit. I think what's a great thing is, being that we primarily draw from the Twin Cities, and a lot of our staff as well as campers come from the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, it'll be maybe that holiday Christmas break, the groups can get back together and hang out again. We do a number of events outside of the camp season that kind of create these opportunities for those groups to come back together, hang out, meet up. Maybe it's as informal as getting coffee, or maybe it's, one of our organized events, but kind of allow them to touch base and kind of have that physical contact again, and check in with each other and how's everybody doing? Oh man, college has been crazy. It's I just keep thinking about our trip and how it's been for you. You're doing this new job. So being very intentional about creating those opportunities to maintain those friendships, after the trip, after they left camp. And I can't stress enough, the importance of, like you mentioned earlier, kind of warning parents, or kind of giving them a heads up, don't expect to hear all of the stories right off the bat. There's going to be stories seeping out for months and years to come. Don't expect them all to be right away, right off the bat. So,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. I often talk about my experience in high school, where just going away to camp for 2 months and having those long-term friends who are not camp people, who eventually just call a halt, and in October one day just say, I just need 7 days off of camp stories. 7 days. And then I'm willing to listen to your camp stories all over again. But please just give me 1 week without camp stories. And I imagine it's just so much more when you have this intense relationship with the land, with the trip, with the people that you're out there with. Does anybody else have any good or maybe unusual reintegration tips? Anything that stands out?
I have a feeling this isn't unusual. It just hasn't come up yet. But there's also the really intentional debriefing before they come back into the camp experience, right? And so our trainers definitely are all trained, and they come with amazing toolboxes already through their own experiences of ways to facilitate those discussions, but also ways to give those campers reflection time so that they can make sense of that and make meaning of their experience. And then when they come back to camp, we give them opportunities to tell their stories, which is another really important tool for them, especially being able to, I like how Fred talked about that transition piece and telling that story in camp where they're legends, right? They're the ones who've been away all summer. We talk about all the time. And that they can tell that story to a more captive or more understanding audience before they transition into a place where telling that story is a little bit harder.
Right.
Or they get a blank stare once in a while. Yeah.
The way we do that piece of it is through a bit of formal ceremony of their return. They paddle back into camp, and that's a big hoopla after having traveled forever to get back to Algonquin. And then we still use the council fire trip report as a real tradition. I mean, it's 100 years old with us, but at night, the fire is lit and the whole camp together comes as a community, and they hear from the trippers about their trip in that old-fashioned way.
Yeah. Fred, you're going to say?
I think that closing is super important, and we're very intentional about that as well. And I think, so often, you share your story like, oh, how was your summer? It was amazing. I did this incredible trip, and some person's going to say like, oh, cool,
right.
like just kind of blow it off, and that can be like such a jab. So really make sure that they feel supported, they feel welcome, and that the whole community is proud of them. Can't be stressed enough, and give that closure to the experience is huge.
Yeah,
and the great thing about the closure in that environment is everybody gets it. Like it's that shared, whether you were out for 5 days or 52, you get it. There's that camaraderie that we've all been out there together. And so through debriefing, as Ruth you mentioned, and trip reports and skits, and just getting up in front of the dining hall, the whole community to say this was our trip and talking about the trip, and it's just such a great opportunity. But that certainly helps solidify things with a group of people that are fully engaged in what it is you just went through.
Right. Right. So there's so many things I think we could keep going. We'd love to come back to this at some point and think of how to dig even deeper into some of this stuff. But I wonder if you could have a little think about this as our wrap-up piece. Ruth, you mentioned about changing the focus in the last few years and equipping your staff with more mental health tools. Any of the others, and Ruth, if you have something else, please add it in. But is there anything else that's changed a lot other than technology? Is there anything that's changed a lot about big trips in the past 5 years?
I could take a shot, I guess, to
please
start. There's a couple things I wanted to be sure to have a chance to mention on the podcast, and they kind of fit into this slot. One is that we're working on constantly improving the cultural context that we have and can master for the people and places we're going.
Right.
And I think for me, the last 5 years have seen a huge uptick in our effort to connect with people that live full-time in the North and to help our kids. And remember, our participants on those trips are only 15 compared to my friends on the podcast here. So for all of us to have a better cultural connection and context for the people that we're interacting with and for the land we're traveling on. And the other piece for me is really continuing to embrace traditional travel at Pathfinder.
Yep.
And that's not just the gear and the methodology, but, in one sense, it's also hanging on to the idea that we don't want our guys just barely getting back banged up and threadbare after 38 days. We want them to come back having sewn their buttons back on and kept their stuff in good working order and kept their heads right so that they could turn right around the next day and go out with clean underwear. So, traditional travel being able to live and thrive together. And what you were looking for is the group to say, we could have kept going indefinitely.
Right.
We're working hard on that. And then the third one is very pedestrian, and that is we've got to get a handle on how we're going to continue to use SATCOM on our trips so that we don't spoil the culture and we don't disempower the guides. So that's constantly evolving for us, a sense of what that's all about. That would be a podcast in and of itself.
Yeah,
that's funny. Yeah, you mentioned that, Slads. That's exactly what I was thinking with the advent and the ease to which we have communication. So there's certainly a plus side to that. But we still need to create thinkers, leaders who can make decisions and think for themselves and not immediately turn to, oh my gosh, I have to call camp because it's the only thing I know to do, So I would say that's become more of a challenge. And Ruth, the mental health, I even find the mental health with staff too, right? Absolutely. I mean, it's campers and staff so I dare say over the last few years, we have become far more supportive that way in a much broader scope than we were at one time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've been, looking at these trips more and more, and all of our trips on the whole, but especially these ones, is wanting to really make sure that these spaces that we're going are obviously physical spaces that we know well and feel comfortable sending trips, but more importantly, that our trips themselves are emotionally safe. And if there is a kid who's, really dealing with some issues at home, that we're, using this experience as a place where they can, talk about what they're going through and talk about what kind of problems they're facing or what their fears are and what their strengths are. And, really use these trips as a tool to allow these kids to grow and transform and get as much out of the physical experience, as the emotional experience. And really training our staff to be intentional about what that looks like in terms of, group forming and day-to-day routines. And giving them, as much, allowing them to take as much away from these trips as possible in as many different ways as possible.
I'm going to go on a tangent a bit on that one. And go more towards the communication piece again and recognize that over the past few years, parents have more, every year they get more access to like those horror stories of the one or two things that went wrong on a trip somewhere. And it's made it a lot harder for us for parents to understand why we don't communicate with our trips every day or why they don't check in. And we do that in other ways, but that parents are asking for the sat phone numbers so they can call their kids and check in with them. And parents, luckily not as much within our community because like what everyone's been saying, right, we've built up an understanding of this tradition of long-term canoe tripping or tripping in general, but that's a really hard thing for a lot of families to buy into. The culture change and the stories that they hear and helping them to understand the value associated with that risk.
Yeah. Cool. Well, so Mike, you had some good stuff you wanted to cover. Does anybody else have stuff that they wanted to make sure was said in this discussion?
I think just if one last thing for me, and I know resilience keeps coming up. I think if you're on a 5-day canoe trip and you're experiencing a lot of rain and discomfort, I think that the end is quite close. You're close to those comfort creatures again, back at camp or back at home, wherever. And those trips absolutely have value. I mean, those are building blocks to where we go. And in the end, though, the long trips, if it's day 7 through 14 of tough bugs and conditions and portages, and boy, it's really uncomfortable. It just has a different way of testing your mettle, and so the resilience is at a different level when you're experiencing a long canoe trip. You're further from your creature comforts, and maybe you're having to push yourself a little bit more out of your comfort zone. And I think that's when participants get a real taste of the possibilities of what they can do, right? Which is more so in a longer experience than a shorter one.
Right. Right on.
Yeah, our caveat with that is trying to figure out ways to make sure that the participants who go, campers and guides, are really ready to go on a trip like that. And for us, we have the advantage of, sort of a lot of career kids who are coming year after year and building themselves up for it, and staff who incrementally get more and more qualified to lead. Less of a challenge for us, but I'm sure a huge challenge for other camps is putting first-year campers on long trips, because that's who's coming and wanting the experience, or second-year campers, or and finding ways to help them be ready to the extent you can. It's got to be a big challenge, but such a worthwhile one to grapple with before you throw them out into that metal testing scenario that Woody's talking about.
Yeah. Well, listen, folks, I am so grateful for this discussion and for you being a part of this. Thank you very much. At the end of the show, for those of you watching or listening, we'll give you a chance to find out how to connect with these people if you have follow-up questions or something they said really stuck out to you. But if you're a long-term listener, you'll know that we're always grateful for people who give us feedback on the show. So if you want to let us know about this show in particular or any of the other shows, please go to camphacker.tv/iTunes, and you can leave us your feelings. An honest review would be great. We really appreciate that. That helps us get more people listening, and certainly it gives us the opportunity to have this platform, to have these long, good discussions about camp. So we're grateful for that. So then I think it's time for us to start to wrap things up. What I'd like to do is move us on to our tool of the week.
Tool of the week.
For those of you who are joining because you love the power of big trips and are listening to your first CampHacker podcast, the tool of the week is something we ask the panelists to bring that, in its simplest form, helps them be a better camp leader, a better camp director. And they go back to past shows, you'll see the tool of the weeks have been broad in spectrum and deep in purpose. So we're looking forward to hearing from these panelists today what their tool of the week is. We have some that are really specifically trip-oriented, which I'm super excited about. So, Woody, I'm going to start off with you. What's your tool of the week for the show?
We do halfway through the summer. It's called the Safety Review. And it's an opportunity for all of our staff to connect with, in our case, it's some board members that have been tasked with the job of connecting with each staff member one-on-one, how their summer is going, what policies are working, what changes do we need to make, how's our equipment, how are you doing emotionally, all kinds of chances to connect. It's really an opportunity for us to see how we're doing partway through. And it's not with myself or JJ, the two directors. So it's an opportunity for staff to say things if they need to say in an environment that they feel like they can say it, and or simple things may come out like, the way we've been packing for these trips doesn't really work. Let's modify this. And there's nothing like input from folks that are right in the field.
Yeah.
And so that's our in a nutshell, a safety review partway through the summer.
Right. And Woody, is that formalized in any way? Like, does a board member come in with a clipboard and a piece of paper that's been created ahead of time, or is it less?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
There are a list of questions, and of course, then there's room for dialogue to expand. But there is a structure that's been agreed upon beforehand, and that's what we'll go in with.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah. And the staff, they wait for it.
Yep.
They love it.
Yeah.
It's now part of the culture.
Yeah. Well, yeah, any staff member who would appreciate the chance to be heard and look forward to a chance to share some things they've learned. Good. Thank you for starting off with a very strong tool. Fred, you had a couple of great ideas to help people planning this kind of trip.
Yeah, I heard about this really, really great mapping website called caltopo.com a couple of years ago. It's got, I will say it's a little more biased towards the United States and Canada in terms of some of the available maps. Right. But that being said, I've been able to, get a call in from a trip in Manitoba saying they see smoke, and I pull up their location on this map, and it looks like, I had more up-to-date fire information than the incident commander did. So it's great for on-the-spot check-ins with where they are. It's great for route planning. You can, do a really good job of seeing trails, seeing ranges. Just an amazing amount of information is on this website. So for planning new routes, looking at where groups currently are in relation to where they should be, it's just an all-around. It's my go-to map tool these days.
Cool.
And is it a subscription service?
The basic one is totally free, and it's sufficient. You can pay for like an upgraded pro version,
right.
But the basic one is great.
Cool. Yeah. That's great. Thank you so much. Mike, I'm looking forward to hearing yours. You had some cool ideas, I think.
Well, we talked a little bit about number one. That's our Council Fire Trip Reports tradition, which I think is a great tool for us. And it includes the warm welcome back to camp for the trippers and a ceremonial and sort of stylized way for them to bask in the recognition, to feel that initial reflection, and to inspire those younger campers and staff. And I might mention that, the younger people and the shorter trips are included in those Council Fire ceremonies, so that long trip, medium trip, short trip all blend together in kind of mutual admiration and respect and excitement. So that's cool. I think that's a good tool, is to go back to that, one of those woodcraft roots in camping. The other piece that I think is a great tool and we're evolving ours, is to have some sort of evac fast kit on your trip, your long trip. Something in the brain of a staff man's baby pack that he's got with him all the time, having the canoes ready to get out of there if you're on the river and the polar bear shows up. If something happens and forces you to abandon a good portion of your outfit or leave your campsite, you've got the basics that you need, including your comm devices, in one place, ready to bug out. And so we're thinking about that more and trying to come up with a system that makes that a reliable default.
Yep.
And it's a shame that we have to think about these kinds of things, but it's well worth it.
Yeah. So what other stuff would be included in that kit, Mike?
It's stuff like no-brainer fire-making supplies, so that rather than having to be crafty when you're under duress, you've got quick fire at the ready, having your SATCOM there, having some backup power gizmo if you need it, having some things like just space blankets and extra set of bear bangers and flares, a little bit of backup first aid, a little bit of just small energy food source stuff, just a little kit, so that no matter what's happening, you've got those fundamentals, and you can talk to camp and assistance. You can have a little bit of shelter and warmth. You can have a little bit of sustenance, and you can sort out your problems and push ahead.
Right. Because it's a lot easier to think when you're a little bit warmer, have a little bit in your belly.
And the kids get a lot of psychological sustenance out of having the guides be able to reset and help them and then move ahead.
Right. Yeah.
So we haven't had to use it, but someday.
Cool. Yeah. And you're ready when it is someday.
Yep.
That's awesome. Good. Thank you. Ruth, what did you bring us for your tool?
My tool has nothing to do with these tripping things directly. I have fallen in love with the Passion Planner this year, and it's something that I was always really skeptical about until a friend started using it. And what I like about it, and what I've learned a lot as a camp director through it, I'm touching it right now, is that it has taught me how to goal set in a really different way, and it's taught me how to prioritize and to link those two things together. And so I am really good at keeping a really long list of things to do and then just eeny, meeny, miny, mowing every time I finish one. And instead I've learned to prioritize and plan and manage my time a lot better through it. So it's been a huge tool for me in being more efficient as a director.
Right. And it's a physical something that you bought?
Yeah, so it was started by Kickstarter. So you can either buy it or you can download their whole document for free and then use it as you do. So I know different people interact with it differently, but there's some good tips.
Right on. Well, 'tis the season for planners because that's my pick as well. This mine just came was just shipped in. It's called the Productivity Planner. I assume that you can read that. It's backwards. I'll put the links. The same for everything that we've talked about that we can point a link to. So Fred's and Ruth's and mine, you'll see that in the notes. So if you go to camphacker.tv/podcast, look for this, which is episode 87. You'll see the links to these things. And so Productivity Planner was also a Kickstarter that I supported. A lot of the same ideas, good stuff for prioritizing. They also sent it a PDF to backers. And I modified that and put it inside GoCamp Pro for people to print off for our members. And just nice to get the physical product in my hand. I don't know what it is about nice paper and well-organized thing that's kind of inspiring. You feel like you could not take on more, but have more control over things. And I really have been using this model.
Or taking stuff on.
No. Yeah. I really have been using this model from Productivity Planner now for 2 months and have found it makes things feel a little more in control. So I would check it out. You can get a 6-month book for $25, which is kind of expensive in my mind. We're going to use it for 6 months and see how it feels about reinvesting. But for now, I think it's certainly worth it. So And do check the camphacker.tv/podcast for the show notes for this and all of our other shows. In my dream world as a podcaster, if we had an intern, one of their jobs would be to go back through past episodes and create a separate section on our blog of just tools. That would be the all tool of the week section. And maybe someday that'll happen. But in the meantime, I encourage you to check that out. There's great stuff from today and from our past shows as well. So. At this time, and then it's time for us to start to wrap this up. I really want to thank our panelists for being a part of this, giving up part of their day and sharing with the wider community. I'm going to give each of you a chance to just let people know how to get in touch with you, where to follow up and check out your camps. And we'll say goodbye after that. So, Fred, I would invite you to start first. Where can people get in touch with you or and check out your camp?
Yeah, probably the easiest way. Our website is just campmanogyn.org. That's MENOGYN. Email info@campmanogyn. And you can follow us on Instagram or manogyn.magic.
Right on. Well, Fred, thanks so much for being here today.
Yeah, this has been awesome. It's been really fun chatting with all of you. And I feel like there's some follow-up emails to pick your brains on strengths that y'all are bringing to the table. So It's been great. Thanks a bunch.
It's great to have you. Mike, how about you? How can people connect with you if they have some follow-up questions or want to check out Pathfinder?
Yeah, for sure. Please do. It's camppathfinder.com or email mike@camppathfinder.com. And I'll be looking to connect with Ruth and Fred, make new friends.
Yeah, right on. Thanks, Mike, for being on the show.
Thanks.
Ruth?
Yeah, you can reach us online, camppinecrest.ca, or our email is camp.pinecrest@ymcagta.org, and Facebook is where we're most present online for sure.
Great. Well, it's so great to have you here, Ruth. Thank you.
Thanks.
Right on. And Woody, how about getting in touch with you or finding out about Wanapitei?
It's internet driven, so it's wanapitei.net. That's WANAIPITEI, and .net as in HockeyNet, and or Woody@wanapitei.net, and everything is online.
Right on.
And it's nice to meet you guys, see you guys, and Slads. Good to see you as well.
Yeah.
Right, Woody. See you soon.
Yeah.
Thanks, Woody, for being on. Once again, thank you to all of the panelists for being here. If there's any way you want to get in touch with me, you have suggestions for future shows, or just want some help to get in touch with past panelists, reach out to Travis at camphacker.tv. I am on Twitter and Instagram as @CampHacker. And we're doing a little push with Snapchat this spring under the Go Camp Pro banner. So you could look for Go Camp Pro on Snapchat. Just was an experiment to see if we can learn some lessons to pass on to camps as another communication method. Now, not something I would ever advocate for on a long trip, but in between trips when everybody's at home. Thank you very much for joining us, for either watching this on YouTube. If you appreciated the show and thought that you got some good insights from these folks, we would love it if you subscribe and share this video. And if you're a listener on your smartphone while you're walking a dog or doing your dishes or driving somewhere, stay safe, and thanks for being a part of this conversation. Thanks for the evening, friends.
Thank you, Travis.
Good done.
Thanks, Travis.
Well played,
Thanks,
everybody.
Travis.
The Camp Hacker podcast is brought to you by Walking Maverick Consulting at walkingmaverick.com. Thanks for listening.
Hey, it's Travis. Camp directors often tell me they're just too tired to take on anything new. That's exactly why my free Resilient Camp Blueprint Diagnostic exists. It doesn't add work, it shows you progress. Quick, free, repeatable, you'll know if your systems are paying off without the guesswork. Try it today at camp.mba/Travis. That's camp.mba/Travis.